Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Ted, and today we're going to talk about how monsters affect your campaign world and how the campaign world can affect your monsters. So with me are some of my esteemed colleagues. We have
Nate,
Dave,
Ryan.
So, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons monsters in the campaign world.
I don't think the addition matters so much for this one. But here's the thing. Like, if you look at what we've already done with Griffin Gaff and what the things we've talked about, right off the bat, two different, a race and a monster are tied together, and they've affected our world in a big way.
Okay.
You know, we have the dragons being banished. And we're kind of like picking up the campaign in a spot where we're going to start reintroducing dragons into the world. And along with dragons comes Dragonborn.
Right.
Since, we basically have them as being our vassals for the dragon. Yes. So, right off the bat, if you look at it, our campaign is already being influenced by the monsters.
Right.
And then I was reading through the monster manual, and I found one monster which is freaking awesome for their ecology and storyline stuff is awesome for Griffin Gaff because of the stuff we came up with, the Chaos Bleed and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you turn to, we need N-O.
Okay.
You'll see Nothlic. I'm not sure if I'm...
Nothic?
Nothlic, something like that.
Right.
You'll see a monster that basically they hang out where magic is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And one, they look freaking really cool, but Nothic. So their thing is,
I'll name this one Blinky.
They're like cursed mages or sorcerers who are always seeking magic, and because of the curse, they don't actually know why they do it anymore. So they hang out around these places. I actually planned a non-combat encounter that didn't happen with one of these guys because they just stalk. They're going to... when we had the Chaos Bleed happen, or the occurrence happen, these guys are going to be following it around. It's actually going to be a problem that our prospectors and our Chaos Bleed Storm Chasers are going to have to deal with.
Goddamn Nothics.
and we could have a big influx of these into the world because of, well, you have the Chaos Bleed, but they could even be the wizards and sorcerers that helped be the people on the ground fighting their dragons, so like when we lost a large populace of that, if we're doing the mech thing.
Well, we were talking about the mech thing.
Yeah,
so
they got all the people on board killed by terrible magic explosions that they could have just been transformed into those things.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we could do something like that where our Nothic race is actually one of the oldest races because they sprung from the loins of of this conflict, really.
Yeah.
But whenever you're talking about your campaign creation, anyway, monsters are going to always come into play because as DMs and game masters, we're always looking at how are we going to create conflict for our players to get involved with.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, pretty much it always involves monsters, in a
usually.
fantasy D&D game. So in order to even have that, you got to know what's even around.
Yeah, you can't just... Well, I mean, you technically can just say, okay, well, I'm going to put the players on a trail, and I'm going to put monsters in their way. But if you want it to mean more, there needs to be a reason why those monsters are there. And, but beyond that, there's questions and there's, things to solve.
Well, and the other thing, too, is like certain campaign worlds, even like Dragonlance. Dragonlance didn't have any goblins. Or no, it had goblins. It didn't have any orcs in it.
Mm-hmm.
You look at freaking Dark Sun doesn't have a lot of things.
Yeah, they just killed off a whole bunch of stuff.
They kill player races and monster races.
Well, yeah, basically, if you throw everything into your world, it doesn't really seem that distinct, for whatever reason.
Unless it's Eberron. Somehow they did it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but they have the whole sort of film noir thing going for it, So.
And they made it a little bit more techy as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you have to have... So you can technically do a little bit of everything, but I think really that always comes back to your high concepts. Like Forgotten Realms has everything, but there's no overlying theme to kind of make it interesting, where Eberron has that film noir feel to it, and a little steampunky.
With Forgotten Realms, though, it's not everything isn't available in just one spot. I mean, you could make it so, but there's some places where there's going to be less goblins or more orcs or less. Maybe the dragons don't hang out in a particular area. They don't have to have. It's not like 1% is this, 1% is this, 1% is this.
No, but I mean, you got in Forgotten Realms, you do have everything. You have Qatar, which is this is where our Asian flavor of stuff hangs out, and then you can have
everything.
You have the Meztica setting where here's our Conquistador flavor. Yeah, that too. Yeah. Setting is hanging out. So quesadillas. Yeah. So you kind of do have that stuff in Forgotten Realms, and it's just spread out, but there's no overarching theme that ties it together and makes it interesting, like Dark Sun, like Eberron. I mean, even Dragonlance for, its time in the sun. Mm-hmm. And then, or Spelljammer, or any of those things. So, Spelljammer is probably another good example, even though we haven't played it much. It introduces a lot of, new monsters and are flavored specifically towards that. Right.
It almost felt a little like Ninja Turtles, anthropomorphic things in costumes with, arquebuses and other weird
exactly. I was going to mention the were they Griffs?
The Gaff, the big hippo man.
Yeah, because that's instantly what came to mind.
Yeah. And then I think they also had the elephant men too. It felt very Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
There were elephant men, I know exactly, but they had two trunks.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't know if that was more of a Spelljammer thing or if that was just some
that also I think might have been a Planescape thing actually. They were just from a certain plane.
Well, that's true. That could be very well be the case.
Might be what that was, yeah.
And then when you mentioned Planescape, automatically I start thinking of Modrons.
Yeah.
Which they're in the planers. They get the Modrons back.
They are back.
Da.
So, but Griffin Gaff, right? So what are we going to do
Wait a minute. So I was looking for griffins in the campaign. Apparently there are no griffins in Griffin Gaff, which is a bit of a gaff.
Yeah.
Well, that's the gaff. Yeah. They're not really there.
So, what you're saying is, are we going to exclude or include specific monster races?
Or building up story around it. That's what I'm more interested in. I don't care about excluding or including anything per se, but I would rather work on the interesting bits of lore to build stuff around. I don't want to automatically just exclude things because then that limits what we can do down the road.
Absolutely no Weemix at all.
Gosh darn it!
I'm just kidding.
Ted just quit.
Yeah, he rage quits, flips over the table.
Oh man, I remember them.
Yeah, it's I want to play a centaur, but I want him to be a lion. Weemic. Yeah.
So Nothic is a good example of something that needs to be in our campaign.
Yeah, so we can build up
a staple creature, I think.
Well, it's nice that they're pretty decent CR.
2.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not too bad.
You
could have 1 be a real big challenge, or you can have 20.
Or 20, and just kill the party. Just TPK the party. That's all.
And call it a night. Well,
and play video games.
I think there's a good possibility for role playing with them too. The one that
you're saying players could maybe play Nothic? Is that what you're alluding to?
Close, but
no exactly.
Thank you.
Bless you, Ted.
So you mean more that they don't just attack you on sight? Is it that kind of monster?
Yeah, because
well, it starts off saying a baleful eye peers out of the darkness. Its gleam hinting a weird intelligence and unnerving malevolence. Most times, a Nothic is content to watch, weighing and assessing the creature it encounters. When driven to violence, it uses its horrific gaze to rot the flesh from its enemy's bones.
Whoa!
So you've got a situation where if you don't attack them, they might just sit there.
So up until the gaze that rots flesh off your bones, it was giving me that Golem feel,
and that's how I was going to actually play the
creeping
encounter.
After the party.
I was going to play. I see them as kind of being skaven, cowardly, and kind of lurking. Yeah, sure, they'll do you harm if they can, but they're not going to put themselves at risk to do it.
So they have a gaze attack.
They do.
Ooh.
And it rips the flesh off your bones.
The Nothic targets one creature it can see within 30 feet. The target must succeed on a DC 12 con save against his magic or take 3d6 necrotic damage.
Yeah, is that like a once per day thing?
No. That's
It's
an
like
attack.
Bodak.
It's
It
just
looked
when
at you,
F's.
it did it.
When it feels like it.
That's its attack.
I mean, and so like, what if like our prospects are started enslaving Nothics because they can find the Chaos Bleeds?
They'd be like,
And they're using them like hounds.
Fox
Like
hounds.
the hunt truffles, like the pigs that
Yeah.
that hunt truffles.
And then, oh, that'd be really interesting. You'd have special equipment that you have on them so they can't melt your flesh off.
Well, like horse blinders, basically.
Yeah,
Except
the pig.
just-
Just like a big helmet face on the front of his eyeball.
Well, and then the other thing goes is like, so the ethics and morals behind doing something like that,
Yeah.
comes into play. It creates some interesting questions.
Right.
Like these are kind of like loathsome creatures, but even so, do they deserve to be enslaved and used and exploited?
Yeah.
In another way, they're also kind of cursed.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously,
The precious.
they're precious. Obviously, there's no going back for most of them because they've just bred out over the centuries. But you could do something cool where you have like a greater Nothic, one that was actually one of the original ones that got transformed, or that maybe he even leads some of them or something like that. If there's a huge chaos bleed occurrence, what if a horde of these things come?
Spilling down, ravaging everything in sight or
Now,
whatever.
say, do they eat it? Do they just are they just attracted to it?
Nothics are notorious for infiltrating arcane academies and other places rich in magical learning. They are driven by the vague knowledge that there exists a method to reverse their condition. This isn't a clear sense of purpose, but rather an obsessive tug at the end of their mind. Some Nothics are clever enough to realize that this is merely a part of the strange lesson for their folly, a false hope to drive them to seek out more arcane secrets.
So, with that being said, and that's kind of like, they're kind of like the butt of a cosmic joke.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, they were never actually really human.
Right.
Yeah, in our world.
Right.
Yeah.
So they can't actually transform back, but because they have a racial memory
Right.
of being human, they're always in pursuit of this thing that they can't actually achieve.
Right.
And then we could have, greater Nothics running around, or, NPCs that actually were human at one time.
Right.
And, so that could...
I think I could easily see this too, like some of them having spellcaster levels, like they actually do know enough, have enough insight to actually, because they're always
enough
around
memory.
more. Well, I mean, like, certain ones, like say a greater or whatever, that they're able to, to cast some spells.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, the greater ones would definitely have something else going on just because they're so long lived,
Yeah.
or a throwback. A throwback is actually more sophisticated than the standard specimen
Right.
of the race.
Right,
So it's almost like the reverse missing link.
right, or like the goblin blue.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
like the Goblin Blue,
Yeah.
where they can actually breed other goblins out of existence.
Right.
So, what about you guys? You guys have any ideas? I know I sprung this on you guys last minute.
Well, I always, I go to the big question, and that's our big friend, Mr. Tarask here. We've been gaming, as this group in whatever incarnation for, around 18 years. And as we've said before, we've always stuck to the low-level games, so I've never been in an encounter with a Tarask. But it doesn't say that, a low-level campaign world can't have to contend with that knowledge, or that thing is there, because not only can you say, well, all right, it's just never appearing when that campaign is running, but it's still something that it can lead stories and legends, and even as it says, there could be, cults driven to this creature. Earlier editions had a prestige class, Waker of the Beast. So there's plenty enough story and background to be able to work, and even if you don't want to go with the book Tarask, is there creatures of titanic portions that are in slumber or in another plane?
Well, like the Tarask is essentially a force of nature, like
Right.
creatures of the scale of a force of nature, of absolute destruction.
I think it was Goblin Nerd that's talked about wanting to have a Tarask and a Kraken fight in his game world And not necessarily having it part of the campaign, just something going on in the background.
Yeah, it's just happening.
just to do the giant monster battle.
Well, that's just it's a kaiju. So
It would be
kaiju.
something to watch from at least 5 miles away.
From orbital satellite is
up
where I
on a
wanna see that.
cliff or a mountainside, looking down into the valley.
No, if you're on a cliff, the Tarrasque is gonna
do something bad.
bum rush into the mountain and
Start
you're gonna
an
go in a
earthquake,
landslide. So, at its base, do we want to consider having a giant creature of legend, that's in a slumber somewhere?
That would sound fun, but I think you're coming from the other way. Dave's trying to get us to go from the other way, which is, okay, we have Chaos Bleed, so what would be around that and what purpose? Like the giant mech dungeon, the debris from that. Are Modrons there? Did they come through, and are they kind of like hanging out and doing stuff with those kinds of things?
Well, also too,
What's around a
Warforged-
10-mile radius around Griffin What's the terrain? Is it just all forest? Is it plains?
There's some
What kind of
forests-
creatures would be there?
There's some forests, there's some plains, there's 2 mountain ranges, and it's a coastal port city. So therefore there's water on the one side.
Yeah, so
So
not
we
too
have
far
we have
away.
our islands. We can tap that for some blue mana. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we could have people that are normally associated with the sea close by or coming to port by Griffin Gaff.
Except for our coast is more like a giant river.
Yeah, really giant.
Okay, so, but there's going to be something to that there's a terrain. What's in there?
Right.
Do they interact with merfolk? Do we have merfolk?
Well, and that's just it. That's kind of the point of this campaign building session is to think about how the world's going to be influenced by the monsters, and the monsters are going to influence the world. Like I said, we started off from that point with banishing our dragons, and we're going to slowly have them coming back. What I was thinking about when you were talking too is, what about the far realm? Because we've also talked about having that god.
Right. The Herald.
Yeah.
Which I think we've named. Is that good? Is that working?
I don't know if we've named them
Or
yet
no, the
not.
Harbinger. That's what I had. The Harbinger is what I had come up with for him.
But we got him being kind of like an ambassador from the far realm,
Some crazy
sort of
weird stuff happening. Yeah.
double agent, secret god thing, mabob.
Right.
But so we've got Chaos Bleed, we've got this god from the far realm. So that.
Well, I mean
leaves
that's wide open for any sort of aberration. Yeah, like really.
Well, exactly, and so like we could definitely do stuff with that. Maybe there's
Maybe the Harbinger brought down supposedly secret knowledge to this enclave of the OG, the original Nothics.
Yeah.
And like it was really some stuff that they read that drove them effing bonkers, creating.
He could have spawned them.
Yeah, like basically he brought this hidden lore for them that their minds could not handle, and it like physiologically changed them. Fundamentally changed them.
Or has he been slowly but surely making sure that things like beholders and illithids could get here?
Did they go with? Because illithids used to be humanoids. Did they stay with the thing of them being aberrations? Is that still? I mean, I guess we could always change it too, but.
Through the editions, I've always got the feeling that illithids are from like space somewhere. Like somewhat, they're actually aliens that decided to hang out.
Even here, they're like Planear conquerors.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't know what they're supposed to be. I say we just make them Cthulhu-esque.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have tentacle will travel, right?
Illithids are not in here.
Well,
They're in there.
are they maybe under Mind Flayer?
Mind Flayer.
Maybe.
Yeah, one of them. They're in there. They eat your brain still.
They'll crack it open.
They do still crack it. No, I don't think so. I think they can slither their tentacles in.
Oh, okay.
Cracking skulls open. How barbaric.
How barbaric. Chases the entire flavor of the brain.
Well, it even talks
Yep,
about how
Mind
they
Flayer.
like to make people afraid and then eat their brains and stuff.
Interdimensional voyagers.
Yeah, they did go with aberration.
But if you're looking at stuff off of the chaos, I think a very very easy addition would be the Slod.
Yeah, that's from the chaos, but Far Realm is chaos, but it's not. Far Realm isn't just like chaos.
Mental
creatures.
chaos, like because it's like insanity, like
Yeah, it's definitely
Right, but I mean with the Far Realm, that would just wouldn't that only just put forth just more chances of aberrations? Is there anything else beyond that you would want to work with?
Well, one of the things we were talking about in one of the earlier videos was the idea that like we kind of have a world that like it was almost like a net, and the mesh is getting wider and wider. So invasion things are starting to pour in. So
some
like
of the strands are getting cut of the net.
right. So some of the things are starting to pour in. So like you have the chance for portals from all different types of different realms could potentially open, like realms of chaos, far realm.
And I feel like too, you have different players that have pieces in play, right? So like chaos would be like the demon lord is trying to break through, and he's got his thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
The far realm is completely different. That's this god, and he's got his own far-reaching goals and plans that he's actually probably enacted way before the demon lord even maybe not existed, but before he started turning his influence to this realm.
Right.
And then we have the dragons, which each one of them individually
Has an agenda.
Right? So they all become, they're all kind of interwoven into the world, but they're separate from each other with their different ideologies and their different goals.
Right.
And they're not all necessarily good. I mean, the Sojourner, Harbinger, whatever we're calling that guy, right?
Yeah.
His goal may just be to create chaos on Earth, or Griffin Gaff Plane, whatever we're calling it.
Earth with a U.
He may not have a goal beyond madness. Where the blood god is a god of slaughter. He just wants to keep sacrificing things and, bringing worlds into the fold so he can increase his power as a demon lord. So what I was kind of thinking, like, if we're going to incorporate, kind of like this slow incursion from the far realm that's been happening since, before.
It's like a pet peeve of yours.
It is a pet peeve of mine. This thing has been going on before the dragons have vanished, or right around the time of their banishment, where we have this other god. I mean, because didn't we say, like, weren't we saying basically that
He was inadvertently created.
yeah, they basically shoved the chaos into one spot?
Yeah,
And-
and he was the
result.
And he was early.
Yeah.
he was
Well,
the
yeah.
result.
So what if that happens, right? He gets shoved into this place, and while he's incubating, that actually creates the far realm. And so the far realm is actually
like a demi-plane around him, kind of thing.
yeah, it's an extension of him, and then he comes into this realm, convinces the other guys, nah, I'm one of you guys. I've just been hanging over here, and I'm not weird at all. Oh, tentacles, but I'm not weird at all, right? And he starts enacting this agenda, and one of the first things he does is he goes, yeah, the dragons are really wrecking everything. Maybe he convinced them to do it, Maybe he set the
Playing
dragons
both
to war.
sides. Yeah, the dragons are fighting because
He-
of his instigation.
He convinces the dragons to go to war with each other, and that, I don't know why you're letting that gold dragon rule everything over there. You're way better than him. You're so much cooler. Red is a great color.
It should be everywhere.
It should be everywhere. So next thing you know, the dragons are at war. They're wrecking everything, and he goes to the gods. He's like, they're going to break this world you guys made, and it's so awesome, and I don't think you should let them break it.
You shouldn't do that. No,
You should,
that's not-
and
So
he's like,
he's causing chaos through imparting information to people and causing chaos
and
through-
misinformation.
Yeah.
and
Yes.
misinformation.
and so that brings us forward going, okay, while that's all going on, perhaps he also goes to mankind and goes, these dragons are wrecking everything, and you guys can't even defend yourself. I bet if you had giant suits of armor, you could fight them. So
You're
he
just too tiny
starts,
the way you are.
so he starts giving them information that they shouldn't have. Creating this super race of arcane casters, wizards, that are, almost like, I don't know if you remember from the Dragon Realms book, the Vrod, how they basically, it's kind of like Dark Sun in some ways, but they were just this like super immoral, powerful race of spellcasters that ended up destroying their world. Well, he gives them like that level of knowledge in order to combat it, but they focus it all on the dragons. They haven't had generations and generations to really pervert how they feel and think. So that doesn't happen. So the dragons, they get shunted away. The gods are like, well, you guys can't keep doing that either, because we can't have these giant mechs running around and these uber powerful spellcasters. So they kind of dampen magic or whatever, or maybe maybe creating the demi-planes for the dragons actually drains the magic from the world.
Right.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, this guy did his job in the sense that I've put the information out there.
Right.
And then, like you said, the backlash happens from, the dragons being blasted from this world. And the most powerful of that race actually become the Nothic.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they find each other, they breed true as a race. And they've kind of been like lurking around, trying to find the means to turn themselves back, looking for power, looking for magic. And it's now recently that the Chaos Bleed's been happening, or it's always been happening, but
It's gotten bigger.
yeah, it's been so isolated that they were it kind of worked like a bug zapper to draw the Nothic away from people for the most part, because they just kept going to where the bleeds were.
Right.
And following them around like a bunch of deadhead hippies.
You could also have like a flock or whatever you want to use of Nothics that could kind of be like the preempt, like you have crows over a battlefield.
Oh, yeah,
you have
yeah.
The Nothic. So if you see a Nothic, it's like, oh crap, chaos is gonna happen.
Well, that's what I mean with the prospectors kind of follow them.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what else someone mentioned? They're like,
many hairbringers.
I was in a live chat and we were talking about some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
And, one of the guys is like, well, are you going to make that a background?
Oh, that would be the minor.
Prospector.
Yeah, the Chaos Prospector, yeah.
Yeah. That would be
Interesting.
Well, I mean, it could just be a variation on if there's like something that's more like tradesman oriented in the background. I don't know.
Yeah, there are guilds and stuff. But no, it makes sense to do that.
Yeah, we could definitely look at that.
Because obviously as we go, we're going to want to start creating backgrounds anyway. So
Specific to the area.
yeah, so that was one idea. So, maybe we should have like conclaves of illithids or mind flayers that are kind of like the servants to this guy.
Right.
And you could do it with all different kinds of aberrations too. Beholder works really well.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking
Sentient
too. I was thinking that like maybe when the Harbinger like alights upon the world, that like he just kind of like spawns aberrations.
Well, that could be.
Yeah, like just like he kind of like ejects them or like transmogrifies something that exists. And
Warps
I
things
like
around.
that.
aberrant,
I like that it just changes.
warps the thing. Yeah. Like, kind of if he touches the actual what's real,
Pardon me.
it morphs into
To something that's unreal.
well, a shadow of reality.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously things could have been spawned just from him visiting.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe now because of the way things are, he can't visit, so he can't infect the far realm into this world that way. So now he needs conduits to work through.
Maybe when the magic got drained out of the world, that affected his ability to interact on the Prime
Yeah,
as
his
much.
link. Or like if you think about it, like a tow cable, something that he could use like no, I guess more like when you have the ferry and it has the rope and you're pulling across. Well, he can't get across really that way because the rope's been.
Well,
severed.
maybe that was part of his. Like he knew that he was going to be blocking himself from this realm, but he also knew he was going to be blocking the other gods as well.
Well, yeah,
Direct
and he was
influence.
kind of like a Johnny Appleseed of Far Realm shit going on, like just.
I'm just gonna spread it here, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna spread it here.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like
That could
seeding
work.
the soil. Like right before the dragons went away, he was doing all kinds of stuff to get things ready for when they weren't.
So
Yeah.
if in the area we're working in, there's a mind flayer conclave and like one of the mountains or something is actually hollow and it's filled with a city or something, then that would really affect the area. So, is it next to Griffin Gaff or is it farther away?
Well, there's all kinds of questions like that, and also like even if you go back to our previous video where we're talking about the Winter Lord.
Mm-hmm.
See, again, that's another area. That's a whole region that we were talking about being affected by, having that one NPC, that one monster there.
Yeah.
So,
I have an image for the illithid thing. For some reason, I just see this sort of like this, almost like an upside down spike. But like with like some like alien sort of like the way their ships look, so very like bio-organic type of thing. that just like somewhere like in the hollow of the world that just like floats there. So it's almost like it could have been some sort of ship, but like that's where illithids live. Like
There's a city. There's strong. There's strongholds waiting.
Yeah, it's just like this thrumming like spike of this off-color purple that's like it looks semi-organic. Like it would be kind of
Or like a chrysalis.
right, or but I was imagining it was like
Chrysalis.
I was imagining it was like a spaceship, like an intergalactic spaceship type of
A
thing.
Zerg spaceship.
Maybe a Zerg. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Can we even mention that on a video?
I think we might owe Blizzard like a nickel or something now.
Yeah.
I think you owe Blizzard a nickel for saying Blizzard.
It's 15 cents.
It's racking up.
Guys, yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. I just had an image of like this sort of floating ship type of thing, in some hollow of the Underdark.
I think a good chaos inspired critter would be an ooze. Especially if, they're usually in dungeons, but what if you had one that was like,
Did you watch our last gameplay session?
clean forest floors or something? So like there's these bizarre looking trails that are like bit down to rock, and they go throughout the place, and it looks like somebody's like really tended this forest, this ancient forest.
It looks
But
manicured.
really, it's because there's semi-sentient like animal intelligence oozes that just kind of like zip through the forest, and they're slow, but it would just be something. It wouldn't necessarily be something that's going to attack you. So like it eats decomposers. It's like a rolling fungus, in a sense.
Rolling fungus.
Yeah, but just you take the
Among
ooze,
Us.
take
Whoa!
the ooze template, or make myconids non-sentient creatures that just walk around eating things. I think it'd be interesting flair to have in an ancient forest.
Interesting.
So what I'm saying is, if you had a creature like that, it's obviously making an impact that is seeable by any player characters or anybody in the area.
Yeah, well, that doesn't necessarily. I don't think that has to be chaos necessarily. I mean, it could.
Oh no, it could just be a natural phenomenon.
The oozes, they just happen.
The secret of the ooze.
So let's see. So really, we got that dude. We got Harbinger. Harbinger.
The Harbinger.
Good enough for now. So we got him attached to the Nothic, as well as the Mind Flayers.
And I guess we don't have any, like, there's only a few domains, but I would think he would be lies, knowledge, and chaos, if chaos had a...
Or if there's a madness.
Those are like
one.
his big things.
I don't know if there is a madness one, but
Yeah.
like when the DMG comes out, that might be it.
Yeah, and with the madness style thing, I was thinking that it was madness more through, like, breaking somebody's worldview. So, like, you're just a regular guy in a village somewhere, and then some being that's vastly more intelligent than you shows you all this stuff, or like points you in directions that basically breaks down your understanding of what's real
Well, I
by
mean,
showing you more real things. But that same kind of idea that basically breaks your mind. So that like madness caused through imparting knowledge or imparting lies.
well, there's a combination of that, especially if you look at like the Cthulhu mythos and those stories. Part of it is that, exactly, but then another part of it is that you're indoctrinated with things that just seem so vile to you that it breaks you as well.
So aberrations it goes along with that, and also the him tricking the gods and messing with the gods, showing them how to do things, like the whole imparting the idea of how to get rid of the dragons and how to get rid of the human mechanic things and how to get rid of those weird spellcastery things and make them Nothics.
Yeah, well, I don't see that I feel like a guy like that works in layers, right? So step one is like, okay, dragons, you guys. He goes to all of them and tells them, you're the best, you're the guy, strokes their ego, and starts inciting war.
Mm-hmm.
The dragons on their own, decide that they need troops, and they create the Dragonborn. Then then that guy, he's going to the humans, going, dude, you guys don't stand a chance, but I got this thing that can help you. You should build these guys, right? And you need some more magic. So here's this stuff. And obviously, he doesn't appear to these people as himself. he's going to
It's
be
on the guise of whatever.
yeah, he's going to be various wizards making discoveries, all over the place, going, here's this, here's that, here's this. And then those guys maybe fade in the background and vanish or whatever.
And of course, every time he does it, he's as Ryan said, touching the plane and spewing other types of creatures,
monstrosities,
just by him being there. I mean, we got Chulls, Cloakers, Grells,
and it probably takes he can probably not do it, but probably takes an act of will, which he generally doesn't want to do.
Yeah, right.
But if he's in a guise, he might need to chill with spawning beholders for a day or so. So he gives them what they need, and then it's when the rift, it's when the dragons are expelled from the realm that the magic kind of gets sucked out, which shuts down these mechs. And also somehow, warps and curses, the mages that were powering them, and creating these artifacts.
Now, what if he actually layered spells that he went to the big gods and said, hey, we need to do this. He's part of the talks to get the banishment spell to happen, and what if he layers that spell to actually create Nothics as one last, well, this will be my pièce de résistance, so to speak.
Finale, yeah.
Well, that's also a possibility where basically weaved within everything is this like epic level racial curse.
I think it'd be neat. Going along with that, he causes these three things to happen. Is if they're all connected. So you have the dragons being banished. That effect, creating those planes, also breaks the mechs in such a way, like basically rips up that portal, dimensional planar magic, so things are messed up, and then the chaos bleed happens from that. So while the gods think they're just getting rid of the dragons, and slapping the humans back down so they don't get all crazy. He's basically having them create one weave that breaks all of that up and does exactly what he wants it to do. Kind of like the 1 in a million shot kind of thing, where it's amazing when you see it, but he's like, well, I planned for all that stuff to happen, so it wasn't a big deal. But it's like one rather than like a layered kind of effect, just like if you could say, well, this is physics. If I hit something into this, it goes that way, and then this one bounces that way and hits that. And it bounces that way and hits that. So it's like one thing has just occurred that has.
Yeah, he set up the chain.
Yeah, he gets the gods to start the chain.
He knew how all the various magics were going to interact.
Right.
So once he, basically everything was in place, and it's like almost like a big circuit breaker where everything's connected, except for the circuits hadn't been flipped yet. And he knew once the banishment spell, it would flip them. It would suck the dragons out, suck the magic away, create this barrier to keep the gods from meddling in what he's trying to get going on.
And twist the mages into something cool.
And and twist the mages into something cool in his mind.
More interesting, yeah.
Yeah, more interesting. So it sounds like Griffin Gaff is going to have a higher occurrence of aberrant things and kind of weird tentacle-y things, and
right. Well, in the world in general, one of the things I think we established was that the bleeds have been going on, but it's going to be a new occurrence to Griffin Gaff.
Right.
They've happened at different places, so
we could have Griffin Gaff kind of be on the outskirts. It's not a central location.
It's in the cultural understanding that these chaos bleeds occur.
No, not here, not yet. And even in the world in general, I want them to still be rather new, even if it's been going on elsewhere for the past decade. Because I want the opportunity for the crazy prospectors and storm chasers to come into town, and for people to go, "What the hell's going on? What are these guys?"
Right.
Like, I think that I want that discovery to be there in the game.
Okay, so for a decade, for that level of interaction, like a small town off, well, like a booming town off on the way, off the beaten path, so to say. 10 years is not really a lot of time for it to become common knowledge of a chaos bleed and what happens.
Right.
But there could be people that have been studying it since it happened. Like you're saying, like they're
even
developing
100 years,
the commerce.
Even 100 years isn't really that much. In modern times, yes, it's a big deal. But if you're talking, in medieval fantasy realms where people aren't communicating with each other, and
Via the internet every day.
you don't, you never leave, a couple mile radius of your house.
Yeah.
Things could have been happening elsewhere for a while, and news hasn't come to this part of the world.
Right.
So maybe if it's been 100 years, there might be prospectors generationally that have gotten good enough where maybe somebody's like, in a sense, dousing, like someone can understand where one might happen again if they've seen several of them happen. So maybe the prospectors get here when it just starts, or maybe it has to start. And how long would a cast bleed have to happen at Griffin Gaff based on how far away it is from like major cities or major other prospecting areas where prospectors would show up?
Well, that's the question, right? Maybe the first thing that happens is so strangers come to town going, "Hey, have you seen this creature?" And they start describing Nothics.
Oh, because they're looking for the forerunner of the chaos bleed happening. That's a good idea. That's a good point.
So, I think that's pretty good. We have a start. We have a couple monsters we're playing with, a couple concepts. We're going to have to revisit this one for sure and start weaving it into the other stuff.
Absolutely.
But, hey, guys, if you got any ideas, put them in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. We're actually compiling all the ideas you've already put together, and we're going to actually do more videos just on those alone.
Right, and keep us busy for a while.
And discuss that stuff. But, with that, you can find us at nerdarchy.com, Facebook, Twitter, all the social media sites.
Click like, subscribe, even share.
And you comment like we said. Until next time, my friends.
Stay nerdy.
Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Ted, and today we're going to talk about how monsters affect your campaign world and how the campaign world can affect your monsters. So with me are some of my esteemed colleagues. We have
Nate,
Dave,
Ryan.
So, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons monsters in the campaign world.
I don't think the addition matters so much for this one. But here's the thing. Like, if you look at what we've already done with Griffin Gaff and what the things we've talked about, right off the bat, two different, a race and a monster are tied together, and they've affected our world in a big way.
Okay.
We have the dragons being banished, and we're kind of like picking up the campaign in a spot where we're going to start reintroducing dragons into the world. And along with dragons comes Dragonborn.
Right.
Since, we basically have them as being our vassals for the dragon.
Lords.
Yes. So, right off the bat, if you look at it, our campaign is already being influenced by the monsters.
Right.
And then I was reading through the monster manual, and I found one monster which is freaking awesome.
Monsters in their way, but if you want it to mean more, there needs to be a reason why those monsters are there, and but beyond that, there's questions and there's things to solve.
Well, and the other thing too is like certain campaign worlds, even like Dragonlance. Dragonlance didn't have any goblins, or no, it had goblins. It didn't have any orcs in it.
Mm-hmm.
You look at freaking Dark Sun doesn't have a lot of things.
Yeah, they just killed off a whole bunch of stuff.
They kill player races and monster races.
Well, yeah, basically, if you throw everything into your world, it doesn't really seem that distinct, for whatever reason.
Unless it's Eberron. Somehow they did it.
Yeah. Well, but they have the whole sort of film noir thing going for it,
And they made it a little bit more techy as well.
Yeah.
So, so you have to have... So you can technically do a little bit of everything, but I think really that always comes back to your high concepts. Like Forgotten Realms has everything, but there's no overlying theme to kind of make it interesting. Where Eberron has that film noir feel to it, and a little steampunky.
With Forgotten Realms, though, it's not everything isn't available in just one spot. I mean,
Goddamn Nothics.
And we could have a big influx of these into the world because of you have the cast bleed, but they could even be the wizards and sorcerers that helped be the people on the ground fighting their dragons. So like when we lost a large populace of that, if we're doing the mech thing.
Well, we were talking about the mech thing.
Yeah,
so
they got like all the people on board killed by terrible magic explosions that they could have just been transformed into those things.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we could do something like that where our Nothic race is actually one of the oldest races because they sprung from the loins of of this conflict, really.
Yeah.
But whenever you're talking about your campaign creation anyway, monsters are going to always come into play because as DMs and game masters, we're always looking at how are we going to create conflict for our players to get involved with.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pretty much it always involves monsters, in a
usually.
fantasy D&D game. So in order to even have that, you got to know what's even around.
Yeah, you can't just. Well, I mean, you technically can just say, okay, well, I'm gonna put the players on a trail, and I'm gonna put my.
Awesome for their ecology and storyline stuff is awesome for Griffin Gap because of the stuff we came up with the Chaos Bleed and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you turn to we need N-O,
Okay.
you'll see Nothlic. I'm not sure if I'm
Nothic.
Nothlic, something like that.
Right.
You'll see a monster that basically they hang out where magic is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And one, they look freaking really cool, but Nothic. So
Yeah, there you go.
their thing is
I'll name this one Blinky.
Blinky. They're like cursed mages or sorcerers who are always seeking magic, and because of the curse, they don't actually know why they do it anymore. So they hang out around these places. I actually planned a non-combat encounter that didn't happen with one of these guys because they just stalk. They're gonna. When we had the Chaos Bleed happen or the occurrence happen, these guys are gonna be following it around. It's actually gonna be a problem that our prospectors and our Chaos Bleed Storm Chasers are gonna have to deal with.
Could make it so, but there's some places where there's going to be less goblins or more orcs or less. Maybe the dragons don't hang out in a particular area. They don't have to have. It's not like 1% is this, 1% is this, 1% is this.
No, but I mean, you got in Forgotten Realms, you do have everything. You have Qatar, which is this is where our Asian flavor of stuff hangs out, and then you
can have everything.
You have
in
the
whole of it.
Meztica setting where here's our Conquistador flavor. Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Setting is hanging out. So
Quesadilla.
quesadillas. Yeah. So you kind of do have that stuff in Forgotten Realms, and it's just spread out. But there's no overarching theme that ties it together and makes it interesting, like Dark Sun, like Eberron. I mean, even Dragonlance for its time in the sun, and then or Spelljammer, or any of those things. So Spelljammer is probably another good example, even though we haven't played it much. It introduces a lot of new monsters and are flavored specifically towards that.
Right.
Like the
it almost felt a little like Ninja Turtles, like anthropomorphic things in costumes with arquebuses and other weird
exactly. I was
blunderbuss.
going to mention